what we've been discussing at the Business Today India at 100 Summit is whether India can head towards becoming a developed country by 2047. What we hope to do in this, the final session of this summit, is to talk about the role that politics will play in India's growth, taking it forward or pulling it back. And as we've seen with some of the things that have happened over the past few days, politics has a very important role, because what the opposition is saying is now also having an impact on what the government is able to get done. So that means that changes the nature of what we've seen over the past 10 years. I want to introduce you to our guests. And the reason I want to do this is because you may not get to see them every single day on television. We made a lot of extra effort to bring them in. So let me spend a moment talking about not just what you know about them, but what you may not. So I want to begin by introducing Shashank Mani Tripathi. He's a BJP MP from Devariya in eastern Uttar Pradesh. He's a BTech from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Did his MBA from the IMD Business School in Lausanne in Switzerland. So welcome, sir. Thank you very much. Has been doing a lot of very interesting social work. He'll probably talk a bit about it, and therefore very interesting to have him in politics. Also from the BJP is Konda Vishweshwar Reddy. Amongst various credentials, he's the second richest MP. He doesn't want to be ever referred to as that, so I won't even get into how much his assets are. But more importantly, he's an MP from Chevala Parliamentary Constituency in Hyderabad, in Telangana, an engineer by profession. He's been at the New Jersey Institute of Technology and has at the Essex County College. We have Karti Chidambaram. You know, everyone knows his father, but Mr. Chidambaram is a feisty, pugnacious politician in his own right. Bachelor of Arts in Law from Cambridge University, BBA from the University of Texas, Austin. So thank you very much, Mr. Chidambaram, for joining us. I want to start by asking Karti Chidambaram what he actually thinks about lateral entrance. Right? Now the thing is, if you weren't on camera and if you weren't at this summit, I would expect that someone like you would typically say that it's good to have lateral entrants coming into government because they bring new ideas, they bring new energy, they bring domain expertise. And yet the political opposition takes this issue up in such a big way, links it to reservation, and what could potentially have been a governance reform is then stymied. How will India, Karti Chidambaram, achieve the objective of being an advanced economy with politics of this kind?
I think this, lateral entry as an idea is a good idea. And we've had Dr. Manmohan Singh come into government through lateral entry. So it's not that we oppose the idea of lateral entry. But lateral entry can't be a surreptitious way to pack government with people who are aligned with the governing party's ideology, giving a go-by to the reservation policies we have. And just because you're going to have reservation policy does not mean that you're not going to bring in better talent into government. That I think is an erroneous assumption. I think you can adhere to the...
No, but take an expert in artificial intelligence, biomedical sciences. Now, where will you find, people, if you go into SC, ST, OBC, where will you find these kind of domain experts, sir?
If somebody is an eminent global expert, yes, but just to bring in mid-level or senior-level managers into government and not to adhere to the social affirmative action programs we have in India, I think is erroneous. I think you can adhere to it and still have the lateral entry. The problem here was nobody was opposing the lateral entry. The problem here was they were opposing the lateral entry without the social affirmative program, without that structure coming in. And the pushback didn't just necessarily come back only from the opposition, but from key allies of the government itself, including Mr. Paswan's party. I think the TDP and the JDU would have perhaps privately had a word with the government. But the point is, this government is also learning to consult. If this government has obviously had a free pass for the last 10 years where they ran the government with the diktats of 1.5 people, now they're suddenly realizing the compulsions of cabinet and coalition and things like that, and they're learning that.
Mr. Shashank Mani Tripathi, now there are two things here. I use this lateral entrant example because it highlights a much bigger problem. Now, the opposition's point is, if you bring in like a renowned global economist or a technocrat who's world famous, whose skills you won't find in government, that's fine. You're more than welcome to. That's good reform. Manmohan Singh, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Raghuram Rajan, so many of them. Now you bring in these mid-level, relatively junior officers. Now that some OBC, some you come from Eastern UP, some Dalit, some SC, ST person will feel, boss, I could have done that job. You've had to backpedal. Now that for the first time demonstrates a kind of weakness, because this government, as Karti said, is used to pushing things through, not having to look back. Now you're having to look back. Do you accept, does that potentially signal political weakness? And how did you end up making this move and then having to pull it back? Did the government not think this through fully?
Firstly, thank you for having me at this panel. Pranam Devariya. I think it's important for us to recognize that the mindset that my Honourable Member of Parliament Karti ji is expressing is one of colonialism. Manmohan Singh may well be from Cambridge, Montek Singh may well be from Cambridge, but there are hundreds of IITians who are from small towns and districts. There are hundreds of people from OBC, from Dalit, who are absolutely ready and able and actually going to take this country forward. It's about time we got off our high horse to say that this kind of talent or this kind of energy is only existing in this drawing room for a minute. I think you have to explore that middle India where talent is resurging to come up. And this is the very big change that Prime Minister Modi has brought in. उन्होंने ये देखा है कि वहाँ की ऊर्जा जहाँ से वो खुद ही उठते हैं, वहाँ की ऊर्जा केपेबल है, तो लैटरल एंट्री कहीं से भी आ सकती है. मैं ऐसा नहीं कहता हूँ कि आप कैम्ब्रिज और हार्वर्ड से मत लाओ. मैं भी IMD पढ़ा हूँ, वहाँ भी कुछ क्षमता है. But how do we make sure that the ordinary Indian feels capable and enabled to get up to the point where he's also seen as capable? Now, as far as backpedaling is concerned, we are in majority. We were always formed as an NDA, as a coalition, and therefore there is no question of us being under threat by anyone. We are absolutely confident of what we are doing. Yes, there has to be healthy debate in the parliament, which is happening, and I think it will happen more only if some of the kind of smaller things that is being happening is less. I think we have a golden opportunity, and I want to just end my statement by Viksit Bharat. We are at the cusp of a change. हम लोग एक 25-30 साल के 22-20 साल के एक अभियान पे हैं, जहां पर एक बहुत अच्छा मौका है और 10 साल में हम लोगों ने एक नींव डाली है. अब हम लोग अरावली के शिखर पे पहुंचे, कंचनजंगा हमें पार करना है. इसलिए मैं समझता हूं इसमें कोई दुविधा नहीं है.
Konda Vishweshwar Reddy, respond to Karti Chidambaram when he says that over the past 10 years, your government got used to pushing things through. Now you're having to consult allies. I ask this in the context of the impact this may have on the reform agenda of the Modi Sarkar. Given that, we've been discussing the kind of economic reform that is required in the factors of production to be able to grow and achieve our economic potential, if every positive step you take has to be pedaled back in this fashion, then will you be able to deliver on the promises that you made to the Indian people?
Well, he used the words, Karti ji used the words, when we had it our way. We still have it our way, which is the nation first. And when we had it our way also, we took back the electricity amendments. We took back the 3 farm bills. And when we had it our way, when you're talking about lateral entry, we had Raghuram Rajan come in. So I think, I don't know where this idea came in. Definitely.
It was brought in our government.
Definitely.
It's not brought in by the He was brought in, made Chief Economic Advisor and RBI Governor in the UPA government.
Thank you for correcting me. And talking of lateral entries, which is this thing, there are definitely some areas in a fast-changing world, technology, socially, economics, there are definitely areas where lateral entries are extremely, extremely important. But definitely, as you said, not any government job. There are some areas we cannot accept lateral entries, and there are some disadvantages. He may be a global expert, but he doesn't understand the system, the administrative processes, and he may not understand the ground reality. And so in some cases, he may be a global expert, but a lateral entry may not be suitable here, including artificial intelligence, because the applications of this is far-reaching, applies to various segments of societies. So there are specific areas, I think lateral entries should be encouraged, but yes, not middle level and lower level government jobs.
But one of the big changes is that a party that won 99 seats is speaking with the swagger of a party that is thinking that they're in government but is actually still in opposition, Karti? How do you explain this? You know, at 240 they're looking chastened.
You talked
at 99 you've got this 56 in Chhati as if you won.
Because you built up this narrative that they are going to get 400. So anything short of that was a loss. And you built up a narrative saying that we are going to be less than 2019. So anything above that was a win. So it's all perception is reality and reality is perception. It's your own doing. You talked them up and talked us down, and it was the other way around the results came. Yes, of course, I personally think, I know this is controversial and I think this is a tired and a fatigued government. And that's been clear from the fact that they appointed the same ministers in the same portfolio. If Prime Minister really wanted to do lateral entry, he should have brought in some fresh blood into the cabinet. Somebody from industry into cabinet, not the same old tired faces in the same portfolio. And that is in my opinion, a very defeatist move on part of this government.
Shashank Mani ji, do you want to respond to this? जैसे आप जैसे लोगों को लाए होते कैबिनेट में, new, young, relatively young, but and fresh faces, new ideas. Mr. Chidambaram's point is that they've carried the same team. So you got anti-incumbency building over 10 years, and the charge is that the government is now looking fatigued and tired. How do you respond to this perception?
Firstly, I am very happy as a member of parliament. I have just come back from Devariya. I am heading back tomorrow morning at 7:30 to Devariya. I want to serve my constituency. रही बात ये टायर्डनेस की और 99 वर्ष देखिए, कुल मिला के जब पूरे सीट काउंट करेंगे पिछले 3 लोकसभा इलेक्शन में तब भी 240 से कम है, और इसमें कोई उत्साह की बात नहीं है. ये विषय अलग है कि हम लोग भी कुछ अच्छा कर सकते थे. कमिंग टू दिस पॉइंट अबाउट हाउ न्यू फेसेस कैन बी इंजेक्टेड, आई थिंक the whole system has been injected with a new thought process, which is why this conference has been injected, which is that in 22 years we will become a new nation. So every one of those MPs has and ministers has a certain amount of continuity, but he's charged with a new energy. And for 2 hours and 15 minutes, I was 4 benches behind the Prime Minister. He was not looking tired when all of Congress was gherawing them and not letting him speak for all 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I personally feel that there is no tiredness. We're looking forward for the next 25 years. We're full of energy, and we're full of energy not only of the Prime Minister, but 1.4 billion people. I agree with you that some have not voted for us, and we could have done better. There's no gainsaying on that. लेकिन जो ऊर्जा उनको मिलती है आज भी उस उम्र में वो इस प्रकार चलते हैं जैसे हम लोग जैसे लोग नहीं चल पा रहे हैं. कोई टायर्डनेस नहीं है. हम लोग देख रहे हैं भविष्य के लिए, भविष्य में एक नया भारत बनाना है. उसके लिए आप लोग कॉन्फ्रेंस किए, इसके लिए आपको साधुवाद.
Mr. Reddy, this charge that the opposition is looking rejuvenated and the perception that the government is looking tired, or at least they are trying to make you feel tired or trying to project as if you are tired.
Firstly, don't try to fix something that's not broken. Why should you change the cabinet? We had a great trajectory. We're heading banking sector, which was bankrupt, and State Bank of India profits are bigger than Reliance Industries' profit today. The public sector companies are doing phenomenally well. It's not Infosys shares and TCS shares. The public sectors in last 3 years increased 300 times, 300%, not times. And the capital expenditure, the roads, the highways. So why should we change the cabinet? It's the courage and the strength and the determination and the trajectory that we have. We don't want to change the vector. We don't want to change the trajectory. And that we have to continue. Continuity is very important.
Can I comment? You can spin as much as you want, saying that everything is all right by talking up the situation of the markets and corporate India. And all three of us represent reasonably rural constituencies. And if you go there, you will realize, and that's the conversation we also had privately, is that joblessness is the biggest crisis in India. Somebody just very cleverly said that India has got a NEET problem, not in employment, education or training. That seems to be the situation of most young people. There are close to 3 crore people who come out of the schooling and the college system who don't have jobs. That's a huge crisis. So somehow to say markets are doing well, corporate profits is great, that's the way of talking ourselves in a blinkered way without understanding what really is happening in real India. If you might want to call it Bharat, call it Bharat. There is distress in the villages. Farming is completely unviable. There is no new technological advancement which has been migration, which is being followed by farmers. People are moving away from villages. There are no jobs in villages, and they come to towns, and they're doing blue-collar jobs where even a recent statistics has said that most people make less than 20,000 rupees a month. So it's the stress is real, and the joblessness, unemployment, and underemployment are the real problems, and we can gloss it over, coming to grand buildings and talking about markets, but that's not the
Shashank,
reality.
do you want to respond to this because you come from
Absolutely.
a relatively rural
This is,
constituency? No, just listen to my question. That the opposition's charge is that the government is underplaying the extent of rural distress, that joblessness is much more acute than government would want people to know and to believe.
No, I'd say two things. One is, why is that the case? That is the case because 60 साल तक हम लोगों ने असली भारत पे कोई तवज्जो ही नहीं दिया. गरीबी हटाओ के नारे बन बन के ये बड़े बड़े शहर वाले उसको छोड़ ही दिया उनको. आज की तारीख में कोई इंस्टीट्यूशन नहीं है छोटे शहर. आज की तारीख में हमारे प्रधानमंत्री इंस्टीट्यूशन बना रहे हैं. उसका मैं उदाहरण देता हूं. आज 2 बजे मैं सीएमओ के साथ 2 घंटे की मेरी मीटिंग हुई कि कैसे डिजिटली को हम मेडिकल में डालें. ई सुश्रुत है, कई और स्कीमें हैं. मैं समझता हूं कि कई कैपेबिलिटी के दिक्कतें हैं, कैसे उसको इंप्लीमेंट करेंगे. लेकिन आज की तारीख में विद ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट, Mr. Chidambaram himself said that digital will not happen in these areas. So there is also has to be a sense of purpose to say we have to enable this. 60 साल आप प्रॉब्लम कर गए हैं, अब 10 साल में हम सॉल्व करते हैं. I agree with you that we have to build more institution. Institution building is difficult, but this is what प्रधानमंत्री मोदी is doing. हर जगह जा रहे हैं, असली भारत में असली चीजें करके दे रहे हैं. ये नहीं ऊपर ऊपर गरीबी हटाओ के नारे दे रहे हैं, नीचे कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा. ट्रिकल डाउन हम लोगों ने कितने सालों से देखा है. ट्रिकल डाउन नहीं होता है सर. पिछले जो इकोनॉमिस्ट भी बोले हैं कि वेल्थ क्रिएशन इज नॉट द जॉब ऑफ जस्ट द टॉप पीपल. वेल्थ क्रिएशन हैज टू बी टेकन टू द सेकंड टियर, थर्ड टियर. इसके लिए हम उद्यमिता बढ़ा रहे हैं, हर चीज बढ़ा रहे हैं. आज की तारीख में अगर जयंत चौधरी को आपने देखा होगा, तो मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं कि पहली बार एक ऐसी सरकार आई है जिसने असली भारत को देखा है, उसमें जाया. मैं समझता हूं विकसित भारत क्यों बनाया गया, क्योंकि अभी हम लोग डेवलप नहीं है. मैं इसी बात से सहमत हूं. अभी हमें और जॉब देने हैं, लेकिन इसीलिए तो हम लोग 20 साल तो काम करना है. तो मैं समझता हूं ये डिस्पोंडेंसी का जो असली जड़ है उस पर जाना चाहिए ताकि हम लोग उसका निवारण करें. मैं अभी बल्कि हम दोनों ही बात कर रहे थे, इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद वही 4 टाउन जिन्होंने 200 साल तक हमारा शोषण किया था, उसमें दिल्ली भी है. दिल्ली, मुंबई, कलकत्ता, मद्रास, ये सब हमारे शहर नहीं थे, ये अंग्रेजों ने बनाए थे. उसके बाद हमने क्या किया 60 साल तक, उन्हीं पे अपना फोकस किया. तो मैं इसमें नहीं जाना चाहता हूं कि मुंबई दिल्ली को बढ़ना चाहिए, लेकिन देवरिया को बढ़ना चाहिए, कुशीनगर को बढ़ना चाहिए, कोयम्बटूर को बढ़ना चाहिए. इसके लिए प्रधानमंत्री, हमारी सरकार हर समय तत्पर है.
But Mr. Reddy, the problem with this 10-year versus 60-year argument is that you now have a generation of youngsters who've not seen Mr. Chidambaram's father in power and the Congress in power. They've only seen you. And therefore, they look at their current condition in terms of what's happened, what's not happened, and compare what you said versus where they find themselves at this moment. And that's the economic and political reality that you now confront.
No, absolutely. See, joblessness, job creation is not an Indian problem. It's a global problem. Economy got disconnected from job creation. And we have to deal with it like all other nations. As far as the rural wealth, it has never increased this much as ever before. If you look at the rural FMGC spend, or a village where used to be 4 motorcycles have 400 motorcycles. A village where there was 1 car has 5 or 6 cars. And if you take even MNRG spend, which was a great program started by the Congress government, has now been taken to another level. And anything good, it's been continuing. And MNREG program, which was a dole, is now become an asset creation. Before it was a dole. And you can create assets. And what was 150 rupees has become 300 rupees. The MSP on rice is almost doubled. And we have the highest stocks of rice. So there's nothing wrong in the rural India except which is good and bad, the aspirations have risen. Before, a poor man was a guy without a cycle. Now it's a guy without a motorcycle. Definitely the rural India, it doubled. Aaye dugne ban gaye. More than dugne.
Mr. Chidambaram, let's take a look at some of the populist promises your party is making nationally and in the states. For example, Rahul Gandhi said during the election campaign that 8,000 rupees will go khatakhat into people's accounts. And then when he was questioned, he said, let's make it 16,000. That just sounds very cavalier and reckless. Most countries in Europe and elsewhere push towards a bigger welfare state at a far higher level in the economic growth trajectory, right? When per capita incomes were far higher than India, the governments were much richer. The problem with, because you're in opposition and you have to find some way of getting back into government, with some of these promises that you're making, if you actually start implementing them, the government would be completely bust and public debt would spiral and be unmanageable.
See, whether this was universal cash, direct cash transfer, or whether there were qualifications would have only been known if he had come to government. But direct cash transfer is not a bad idea. Instead of some grand government schemes which are conjured up by bureaucrats and mandarins in Delhi, I think direct cash transfer actually is...
No, but can I pause you to say that, sure, if it's a lesser amount and the amount is thought through, you also explain where you'll bring the financing from, it's something that can be considered and that's not objectionable. The moment you so casually say 8,500, oh, let's make that 16,000, and the poor guy who's out on the street, he's going to say, okay, this is good, 16,000 ghar aa rahe, what's wrong with it?
They're going to nitpick about every promise made in campaign speeches as policy pronouncements and as proclamations, then there'll be no end to it. I mean, I'm sure if I ask the Congress IT team to come up with all the proclamations the Prime Minister said in every campaign speech, then, we'll only be going up and down. So let's forget that. The rhetoric of campaign must be set aside. When we are in they are in government, we are in opposition, our job is to point out where they're going. But principally, direct cash transfer is not a bad idea, because if it goes to a bank account, and what do the people spend that money on? They spend it around the rural local economy. In fact, it's almost like drip irrigation. This is not being spent on something esoteric outside. So it actually seeds the local economy. It's much better than some grand scheme which is very complicated to get. So for example, this Prime Minister's housing scheme. Yeah, you're really giving about 1,75,000 per person who wants to build a house. But that person needs to fall under a certain category, certain economic category, and must have his own land. A person with that land and falling within that category simply doesn't have the money to build a house. What eventually and even inevitably happens, and you'll also agree with me when you go and do your Disha meetings there, is that all these people are pushed into debt, because they don't have the money to finish the house, and you can't build a house with the input costs today at 1,75,000 rupees. So they're all pushed into debt. So sometimes well-meaning grand schemes don't really have results, but direct cash transfer is a little better way of seeding the local economy, giving liquidity, giving a little bit of independence to people. So let's not diss direct cash transfer, but I would separate campaign rhetoric with actual policy when we are in government.
Shashank ji, this government
Can I
has
respond to that,
yes,
please?
this government has kind of opposed universal basic income. There's never been an acceptance that this is a good idea. From what I understand, the Prime Minister doesn't seem to think that's the right approach. He'd much rather help create investment, manufacturing jobs, which gives people real income on a monthly basis rather than a dole and a handout. Karti, Chidambaram and Rahul Gandhi say, you don't have to do anything, we'll send you money home. It may not be 8,000, it may be lesser, but we'll send money home, universal basic income. Now, that's a very populist idea, and the problem is, as rural distress grows, people seem to be desiring that. How will you deal with this?
So I'd say three things. One, first is, with due respect, this was a very deliberate ploy to win the election and bankrupt the country. If it had happened, and God forbid, अगर कांग्रेस पावर में आती, इंडिया अलायंस पावर में आती, तो हम लोग की हाल श्रीलंका वाला हो जाता। और ये बहुत बड़ा साजिश था हमारे लिए, और हमारे वोटर्स को मैं साधुवाद देना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि आज की तारीख हमारी पूर्ण बहुमत की सरकार बनी है। खटाखट की नॉइज इज इजी टू डाइजेस्ट, विकसित भारत इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू डाइजेस्ट, कि हम अपने बच्चों के लिए कुछ कर रहे हैं, नहीं अपने बैंक अकाउंट में 8,500 रुपए हर महिला को मिलेगा, जो भी हुआ। दूसरी चीज, आई फील, राहुल, गोइंग बैक टू योर पॉइंट, जो यूरोप ने किया, क्या हमें वो करना चाहिए? यूरोप का मैं बताता हूं, यूरोप ने 1948 के बाद जब वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 की एंजाइटी थी, तो उनका टोटल गवर्नमेंट स्पेंड 10% ऑफ नेशनल इनकम था। जब 30 साल बाद हुआ 1980s में, तो उसका फ्रांस में 55% हो गया, जर्मनी 45% और यूके में 35%। मुझे नहीं लगता है कि हम लोग को वह पाथ अपनाना चाहिए। और कोविड में भी आपने देखा होगा, निर्मला जी ने उतनी रियायत, उतनी सब्सिडी नहीं दी, और आज की तारीख हमारा इन्फ्लेशन इसीलिए कंट्रोल है, क्योंकि हमने क्या किया, हमने समाज की शक्ति को यूज किया। तो मेरा ये मानना है कि हम लोग आने वाले विकसित भारत में सिर्फ सरकार पे निर्भर न रहें, समाज को उजाएं, और जामवंत का रोल ब्यूरोक्रेसी को प्ले करना पड़ेगा, हनुमान का नहीं कि मैं ही हर चीज कर लूंगा। And I think the third point about this piece about housing being subsidized, and therefore I think the point about that is कि मनी बैंक में आना 1,75,000 एक विषय है, लेकिन अगर उस घर बनाने में या शौचालय बनाने में उनकी सहभागिता नहीं होगी तो उनका बाई नहीं होगा। स्वच्छ भारत मिशन इतना बड़ा कैंपेन क्यों सक्सेसफुल हुआ? क्योंकि थोड़ा समय इन्होंने दिया, थोड़ा प्राइवेट सेक्टर ने डाला, होल ऑफ नेशन अप्रोच अप्लाई किया। और दोस्तों, होल ऑफ नेशन अप्रोच से ही विकसित भारत आगे बढ़ेगा। ये वर्ल्ड की हिस्ट्री में सबसे बड़ा ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव एक्सरसाइज है, और ये सरकार सिर्फ नहीं कर सकती, प्राइवेट सेक्टर सिर्फ नहीं कर सकता, समाज सिर्फ नहीं कर सकता, तीनों को मिलकर चलना पड़ेगा, और इसके लिए आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी बहुत प्रतिबद्ध हैं।
Mr. Reddy, the government, the BJP says we are opposed to freebies. And yet, in state after state, your governments announce freebies. So what initially is called a freebie, in some fashion or the other, I'm talking, for example, most recently of the Maharashtra equivalent of Ladli Behna, which again had money being transferred directly into the accounts of women, which was originally an idea which you opposed. It got adopted in Madhya Pradesh, then got replicated elsewhere. So you first start with the right economic intent that this is a freebie, a dole, you don't want it, and ultimately political compulsions pull you in a way that you have to announce it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely have to differentiate between welfare and freebie. And we've seen certain programs. In fact, the example I just gave, MNREG scheme was a great scheme, but it turned out to be a dole. But the same MNREG scheme, now combined with material component, you can actually build a road. Otherwise, they're going to the countryside and digging a hole for 15 minutes and encashing that MNREG scheme. Now, in this particular case you are mentioning about Maharashtra, well, if it is really going to the right persons and it's utilized in a proper way, it's probably good. But yes, political compulsions, sometimes parties do succumb to political compulsion, which is what we are fighting against. But even that is okay, political. But during the time of elections, promising freebies is something we are directing the nation and the society in a wrong way. And that is
you concede this, that subsidies and
what about
public
the promise of, say, 15 lakhs into your bank account, 2 crore jobs a year? I mean, can I also say that they're all empty promises? I mean, so people vote for various reasons. They don't vote for one slogan or one rhetoric in campaign. But let's not diss direct cash transfer to beneficiaries. Let's not diss. See, you have to have you can't have a siloed view of and a socio-economic view from people like us. There has to be a little bit of diversity of opinion.
But do you concede that welfare and government schemes are far more precisely targeted now than they were on your watch? That the intermediate corruption, the bogus accounts, they're no longer the case the way they were.
That's because of pure technological advancement and ease of opening banks. I mean, that every government builds on the shoulders of the previous government. You don't suddenly come and start building things from ground zero. You build on the shoulders of the previous government. And when we come to government in 29, we'll build on the shoulders of them. That's what's going to happen. So we're not going to diss and say that nothing happened in 15 years.
We
will build on the shoulders of what happened in 15 years.
No, but respond to this, because the architecture that's used, for example, Aadhaar, was actually created on the watch of the Congress. And they're saying, so this is, you say ki niyat hai, it's our intention, which is why there's less corruption. Karti Chidambaram says, it's just digital infrastructure which is available now, which wasn't available previously.
I think, as Mr. Reddy said, I think we should applaud some things which have properly done. So we have as a government no direct view that something which benefits the final, like UIDAI and others, should be adopted. But I think it's not just about technology, it's the mindset which comes behind it. The philosophy was, मैं ऊपर हूँ, मैं अमीर हूँ, मैं आपको गरीब हूँ, मैं आपको डालूंगा. हम ये बोल रहे हैं, and to the point that you made earlier, they have to segment. मेरे हिसाब से 40 करोड़ ऐसे लोग हैं जिसको जो डायरेक्ट कैश ट्रांसफर भी ठीक है, लेकिन अभी क्या हो रहा माइंड से कि आप सबको दे देंगे. 80 करोड़ ऐसे लोग हैं जिसको मैं मध्य भारत बोलता हूं, मिडिल ऑफ द डायमंड इंडिया, उनके पास शक्ति है, उसको जगाने की क्षमता में चाहिए. वी शुड मेक देम अराइज एंड से go ahead and do that, and that way we will not create a welfare state which is burdening Europe today. Europe is under a deep crisis right now, pensions crisis also, because they never use the enabling abilities of that. So I think we need to balance the fact that there is a certain strata of society which may well do with direct benefit, as Karti is suggesting, but there's an enormous strata of society which has to be enabled, and that mentality has to change. Mentality of the Congress was always, and I think many other parties, I am from Uttar Pradesh, so I see that the socialist tendency, जो फाबियन सोशलिज्म से आया था, वो हम सरकार ही करेगा. भाई समाज का क्या, प्राइवेट सेक्टर क्या, उसको कैसे नहीं हम लोग इन्वॉल्व करें. इफ यू डोंट इन्वॉल्व ऑल ऑफ दैट एंड अनलीश द नेशन, you will not have the Viksit Bharat that we are saying, and that's what we have to say. It's not just where we want to go, but how we're going to. And I'll just add one little thing, that if you do it in an inclusive way, it also adds meaning to the lives of people. When somebody like Malti Yadav, उसने अगर अचार की फैक्ट्री बनाई है, 100 महिलाओं को उसने एम्प्लॉय किया है, ठीक है, समय लगा उसके लिए, लेकिन उसके जीवन में अर्थ आया. और उसी के साथ साथ पर्यावरण का भी उतना शोषण नहीं हुआ, क्योंकि वो लोकली कर रही है. हम लोग बड़े बड़े शहरों में बड़ी बड़ी चीजें बनाते रहते हैं, तो देखिए हमारा प्लान क्या हो रहा है.
Mr. Reddy, last question. How do you intend to fight this perception that Karti just let loose right at the end very casually, that in 29 we are going to come to power? That this idea that fatigue is building and that there's a certain level of tiredness and lack of newness. And whether, Ruchu Sharma made this point, it's not as if Rahul Gandhi's become any smarter than he was. It's just that people after a while are looking for something new. How do you intend to, deal with this kind of challenge?
Firstly, if I was in Karti's seat, I would say exactly the same thing. You have to show bravado.
I've been in my seat too, to be honest.
You have to show bravado with the upcoming, what things are happening. We've seen what happened in Haryana. We've seen what's happening in J&K. We've seen what's happening in West Bengal. And we also we are hearing murmurs in Maharashtra. I think the euphoria is over. That 99-seat euphoria is over. And the reality is dawning on the people of India and on Congress party. So I do not see that Modi or BJP becoming any weaker. The trajectory is the same, Viksit Bharat. They are on the same job. If they were nervous, as he initially pointed out, that they should have changed. Why should you change anything? They are confident of it.
Last word, sir.
No, I think India Alliance was a makeshift arrangement to grab power. There was no strategic rationale for it. I mean, you look at the people who are sitting next to each other, they've sued each other, they've done things to each other. I see that in the parliament, in the opposition. Yes, you can make that believe for a certain piece, but deep commitment comes from NDA having thought it through. Yes, we did get less seat. We are not thinking that through. मैं नहीं कह रहा हम डिनाई कर रहे हैं, लेकिन अगर आप देखेंगे स्ट्रेटेजिक रैशनल इंडिया का क्या था, सिर्फ एक था, किस्सा कुर्सी का. हमारा क्या है, राष्ट्र बनाना है.
Of course, if the TDP is aligned with you, they become nationalist, and if they're aligned with us, they become anti-national. I mean, this NDA is a political arrangement as much as the India alliance is, and that's the reality of politics. So why diss people when they are against you, and when suddenly they become holy when they come to you? That's the BJP's rationale. Anyway, we are all going to be around in 29. And I'm sure our places will be reversed.
Well, may the best man, woman or party win. What we find fascinating is that there is a good democratic contest. And that's always a good thing for any country. Konda Vishweshwar Reddy, Shashank Maniji and Karti Chidambaram.
We definitely need that bipartisanship. We need the discussions more than the disruptions in the parliament. That's absolutely important.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking our time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, respected members of the Parliament. Could I please request you to stay back as I request Mr. Rahul Kamal to please present the token of appreciations to all the three speakers. Let's pose for a photo op, please. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. That was our final panel discussion for this evening, and it was an incredible one. Thank you so much, Rahul. And with that, viewers and all the audiences, we have come to an end of this very insightful day full of panel discussions, brilliant conversations. And with that, we thank all our speakers, moderators for making this event a true success. And this was the third edition of the Adani BTIndiaAt100 Summit. Thanks to all our sponsors, without whom this would not have been possible. Our title sponsor is Adani, new energy partner, Becca Solar, associate sponsor, SECI, Sun Forever and NABARD. skilling partner, National Skill Development Corporation. With that, we wind up, but time to please join us on for dinner and networking as well. Dinner is laid outside. Many thanks. You've been a fantastic audience, and this is Sakshi Patra, your host, signing off for the day.